If you were to take a walk down Imperial Avenue in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood of Cleveland, Ohio, you would notice a gap between two buildings where house 12,205 should be standing. Instead, an empty lot is all that remains of the former residence of the serial killer and rapist Anthony Sowell, also known by the moniker, the Cleveland Strangler. Imperial Avenue had a reputation for its horrid smell, much of which was attributed to Ray's Sausage, a shop next to the Sowell home. Little did everyone know that it was actually because of the 11 bodies left to rot inside Anthony's house. In our video today, we'll be diving deep into these heinous murders and into the monster of 12,205 Imperial Avenue. Anthony Sowell was born on August 19, 1959 in East Cleveland, Ohio, where he would spend most of his life. He was one of the 7 siblings born to Claudia Gertrude Garrison, but one of the 14 total kids living in her household. According to the other kids who grew up in the home, Claudia subjected her children to physical and mental abuse, sometimes forcing them to strip naked before whipping them with electrical cables until they bled. However, she was not the only abuser in the home. Leona Davis, Anthony's niece who was living with them, reported that she was raped daily from ages 10 to 12 by Anthony and the other boys in the house. Tragically, this need to have power over women is something that would follow Anthony for the rest of his life. At 18 years old, he joined the military and entered into the United States Marine Corps. Anthony was a model serviceman during his 7 years of service across the world, earning himself a Service Star, a Sea Service Deployment Ribbon, a Meritorious Mast, and 2 letters of appreciation before his honorable discharge on January 18, 1985. He returned to his home in East Cleveland, only to find it drowning in violence and a drug epidemic. While the military seemed to provide order and structure to Anthony's life that helped him quell his monstrous urges towards women, once he returned to a setting rife with struggle and disorder, the demon inside of him once again began to rear its head. In 1989, Anthony met a pregnant woman named Melvette Sockwell and took her back to his home. While there, he bound, tortured, and raped the woman. According to Melvette, the only reason she was able to escape the house without losing her life was that Anthony tired himself out and fell asleep, giving her an opportunity to flee. She immediately went to police to press charges, and Anthony was arrested and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Similar to his time in the military, Anthony was a model prisoner and was well liked by the guards. At the time of his release in 2005, he was registered as a sex offender and would be periodically checked upon by police officers. It was after his release that he moved into the soon-to-be infamous house at 12,205 Imperial Avenue. Back on his own, and free to do as he pleased, Anthony soon began to slip back into his old habits. In June of 2007, Crystal Dozier was reported missing by her family. Not long after her disappearance, a foul odor was reported coming from Imperial Avenue. Health inspectors went to investigate. However, they simply assumed it was either coming from the convenience store across the street, from Anthony's house, or from the sausage shop right next door. With no real investigation going on, the disappearances in the area soon began to pile up. In June of 2008, Tashana Culver went missing, soon followed by LaShonda Long in August. Much later, it would be discovered that LaShonda was decapitated by Anthony and her head placed into a bucket to decay. In September of that same year, Anthony met a woman named Vanessa Gay, whom he brought back to his house before beating her and repeatedly raping her. She managed to get out, but when she reported the case to police, they failed to do anything in regards to her report. Had any effort been put into her case, the lives of 9 women might have been saved. But as with many serial killers, the failings of law enforcement allowed them to continue their murderous spree. 1 month later, Michelle Mason was reported missing, followed by Tonia Carmichael in November. Many people believe that a major reason these missing reports were not thoroughly looked into is that, as many killers often do, Anthony targeted drug addicts and prostitutes, whom he knew the police wouldn't care much about. In fact, Anthony felt so confident that he could get away with the crimes that in December of 2008, he approached Gladys Wade as she walked down the street one night. When she refused to come drink at his house with him, he suckered, punched her, and dragged her down the sidewalk and into his house. She regained consciousness on the floor of Anthony's house and began to scream for help. At this point, he went into the room she was in and ordered her to stop screaming because no one was going to hear her and that she was going to die there. He then attempted to strangle Gladys, and she brutally fought him off, clawing and scratching at him, and even grabbing him and using her own body weight to throw him down the stairs alongside her. When she hit the bottom of the stairs, she went flying through the side door and made a break for it, eventually reporting Anthony to some nearby cops who apprehended him. Despite the obvious evidence around Anthony's house that there had been an assault, the police decided that Gladys wasn't reliable and let Anthony go free with no charges or repercussions. Once again free to harm women, Anthony raped and murdered Kim Smith in January of 2009, Nancy Cobbs in April, Melda Hunter at some point in the spring of 2009, Janice Webb and Tonia Fortson in June, and Diane Turner in September. As was routine with sex offenders, Anthony received a checkup by some officers on September 22, 2009, who met him on his stoop and somehow didn't notice the putrid smell coming from the near dozen rotting corpses filling his home. Later that same exact day, Anthony found his next victim in the form of Latundra Billups. She went over to the house in order to drink and get high. However, once she was in the house, Anthony brutally punched her in the side of the head before ordering her to take off her clothes. He then began to rape her and simultaneously strangle her with an extension cord. Latundra managed to escape and alert police to her attacker, his address, and the fact that she had left clothes in his house which could be used to prove her story. While the case was moved to the Sex Crimes Division, a lack of resources and manpower led to a 1-month delay in any advancement being made on the case. In that time, Anthony was able to find himself a new target, a woman named Shawn Morris, whom he attacked on October 20, 2009. While being sexually assaulted, Shawn was able to break free from Anthony's grasp and throw herself out of a nearby window, ending up completely naked on the ground in between Anthony's house and the next-door building. This was all caught on a nearby CCTV camera, and Anthony can be seen coming around the corner, also fully naked, to inspect Shawn. Donald Waltermeyer was nearby and witnessed the whole thing and instantly ran to help Shawn. Anthony tried to lie and say that the two were a couple who had been having sex when Shawn accidentally fell out of the window. Thankfully, Donald didn't believe Anthony and ran until the cops showed up to take Shawn to the hospital. Anthony accompanied Shawn to the hospital, where he was never questioned or interviewed by police before leaving, though not before he threatened to kill Shawn if she told the cops the truth. 9 days after this attack, sex crimes detectives were finally able to get a search warrant for Anthony's home, over a month after Latundra Billups originally filed her report. On October 29, 2009, investigators finally entered the House of Horrors on Imperial Avenue. Once they entered the house, investigators witnessed the decomposing corpses of 2 women lying casually on the second floor of the house. Lieutenant Michael Baumler, who was there on the day, described the scenes they found in the house as something out of Dante's Inferno. While the whole house reeked of death, investigators noted that as they approached the 3rd floor of the house, the smell got more and more intense. 4 additional bodies were found on the 3rd floor in varying states of decay, as well as obvious signs of Anthony's day-to-day life, meaning that Anthony was casually living, sleeping, and eating while surrounded by the rotting corpses of his victims. Officers also found a skull in a bucket, as well as 4 more bodies buried in the backyard of the residence, bringing the total body count in the house up to 11. Anthony was arrested and put on trial for 70 for charges of rape and 11 counts of murder. Initially, he pled not guilty by reason of insanity, but later his plea was simply changed to not guilty. After months of delays in the court proceedings, Anthony Sowell, the Cleveland Strangler, was found guilty on all but 2 counts on July 22, 2011, and was given the death penalty. After his conviction, Anthony made a statement saying, "I'm truly sorry from the bottom of my heart. This is not typical of me." While on death row, Anthony's lawyers filed several appeals for a stay of execution, as they argued that he had not been truly given a fair trial. After giving his lawyers a chance to fight for Anthony's appeal, The Supreme Court of Ohio upheld his death penalty sentence, and he continued to sit on death row. While there, he had several different interviews with Robert Sperna, an investigative journalist and author. Robert asked Anthony what his motive was for killing these poor women, to which Anthony quickly and chillingly replied, "Abused children grow up." Anthony Sowell remained on death row for the rest of his days, until his death from a terminal illness on February 8, 2021. His death brought a semblance of closure to the families of his victims, though the pain of their loss remains. Let us know your thoughts about the case down in the comments section below, and let us know about any other cases you'd like for